Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give it just a minute while we are letting our participants into this webinar. Thank you for joining us. All right, I see it is 1:30. We are catching you right after lunch, and I see the participant numbers are still increasing, so I'm going to try to speak slowly. We are being recorded, so just thank you for joining us and giving us a moment of your time today. We are so grateful to have you here today. My name is Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission, also known as CSAC. And today I'm joining you with the CSAC team who you saw earlier on the screen from the Rancho Cordova office. CSAC is the principal state agency responsible for administering financial aid programs for students attending public and private universities, colleges, and vocational schools in California. Our work also includes advocating for policy changes to make higher education more affordable for California students, serving as a resource for policymakers and the public on college affordability and financial aid issues, and then, of course, improving financial aid accessibility statewide. And we do that work in partnership with all of you. I am in this role and have been in this role starting on July 15, 2024. And so I want to honor the CSAC team who's also joining me here today on this webinar. They are behind the scenes and will be answering your questions. And as we do that work, I just want to have a tiny little caveat. We're at the point in this student success blueprint where we are asking for your support through your feedback. So we may have more of an aha moment rather than an answer. And so we're grateful that you are joining us here today. I mentioned that I started my tenure at CSAC on July 15, 2024, and it is an honor to serve California students alongside all of you and the CSAC team. For those of you who I have not met before, I am a mission-driven leader with 17 years of experience in K-12 and higher education administration. I started my career in the classroom as a third grade teacher, but I also have a background in state finance, and of course, I'm a sociologist, so I care very much about transformational change at scale, which is why I love this work and working alongside all of you. For my community college colleagues or colleagues who are in financial aid offices, you know me quite well from my previous roles at the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. And therefore, you know that I am an unapologetic student-centered leader, a systems linker, and a social justice warrior. I believe that every student deserves access to higher education, and that when they seek that access, that it must be matched with the right support, and that the systems that we create need to be connected to help our students achieve their educational goal. And that when they dream so big and they actually access higher education, that the only true outcome that matters is that they can achieve economic mobility for themselves and their families. So yes, I'm talking about that degree ending and economic mobility for our students. And that's why I'm so excited to serve in this role and to work alongside you as we reimagine financial aid for the state of California. It's also really important that I share with you that I believe that financial aid is the most important ingredient for student success. I know that in my own personal life, but I also know that for many of you who are first-generation college students, who then became first-generation professionals, I know that difference was actually financial aid. It is a lifeline for many students today. So today's webinar actually has two very clear goals. Number one is to share an early draft, it is our work in progress, on where we are in creating a multi-year strategic plan for financial aid in the state of California. And what you're seeing on this screen is the CSAC Student Success Blueprint, Achieving Equity in Higher Education. That is what we are calling this strategic plan for now. I want to invite you to not just learn about our work in progress, but to achieve our second goal. And that is to invite you to share with us your best ideas and your feedback through our portal so that we can integrate your ideas and your feedback and improve the vision that we have for the future of California. So with that, team, I want to go to the next slide. Thank you, Shelveen, for managing the slides behind the scenes. I want to walk you through some reminders and logistics. Today, we do have closed caption. It is available. You should be able to turn that on your end. It shows as a CC, show caption. We're also using the Q&A feature, so question and answer feature, to ask any questions or to share your feedback. The team is behind the scenes, as I mentioned. You also see a QR code on this page. It'll send you straight to our feedback portal. The link that you see on here also takes you straight to the blueprint. So everything that we will cover today is already on a landing page. And we want to ask you to visit and share it with others. And then lastly, the team here at CSAC reminds me all the time to talk about social media. So please follow us and engage with us at California Student Aid. And you have a number of hashtags that you can engage in today. We look forward to engaging with you through this webinar, through our online landing page, as well as through social media. Next slide, please. I mentioned that presenting with me today is the CSAC team, as well as our broader team behind the scenes to answer questions. I've just walked you through our welcome and goals for our webinar. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about California's financial aid need ecosystem, and I'll be joined by Deputy Director Jake Brimner to share that information with you. Then we're going to go straight into what is this blueprint? What is your work in progress, Dr. Gonzalez and CSAC team? And I will be joined by Chief Deputy Catalina Missler, our Deputy Director Tay Kang, and Deputy Director Jessica Moldoff. And then we'll end off our webinar with a call to action and next steps. These are a set of links and immediate next steps and actions that you can all take. Next slide, please. For us, this is still a work in progress. And when I enter any new role, when I think about innovation, I always start my work through an inquiry and growth mindset. Where have we been and where can we do something differently for students? And it's really important that I share that with you because we have done a lot of good in California, even the most recent work, to make sure that students were completing FAFSA and CADA despite having 3 fewer months last year. And you made history. So if you are a high school counselor, financial aid administrator, thank you for your work. You allowed us to make history one more time, even though the odds, the external pieces of this work made it so difficult. At the same time, as leaders, we have to recognize that we have hundreds of thousands of students who still have dreams, who dream about enrolling, who in fact are admitted, and then when they get to the gates of higher education, they have no way of paying for their education. And you all know this as the multiple studies done on college affordability, which remains a key reason why students defer their educational dreams. Similarly, we know that we are not serving Californians at scale. We have Californians that have yet to have access to higher education and financial aid. And what I mean by that are California's 6 million adult learners, ages 25 to 64, or what others like our colleagues at SoCal Can, California Competes are also calling comebackers. These are students with some college but no credential. And the California community colleges have done a lot of work to better serve those students and innovating in the middle of a pandemic. This backdrop calls us to think as leaders and to ask the question, how do we evolve? How does financial aid get redesigned to help students with unmet need, but at the same time, acknowledge the student populations are actually shifting, that higher ed is serving a very different type of student, and that even those that we are serving, we still cannot meet their needs at scale. So you see a slide in front of you where I am mapping out through several studies, the work of our colleagues at California Competes, at Wheelhouse, at Trust West, and at Trust in general, all the colleagues who have written about this work. And what we know based on their research and their calls to action statewide for many years is that many California students are still not qualifying for financial aid that is available in the state and here at CSAC, primarily adult learners and working learners. Those who do face challenges in accessing financial aid face the challenges and then sometimes don't reach their end goal in time, meaning that they unenroll or they defer their dreams. We also know that there are access gaps. Race, ethnicity, age, region are all an equity imperative for us. And then there's a whole subset of Californians who still don't know about state financial aid and that it exists. And this also includes the complementary social services that are available at institutions or statewide at other state agencies. So in California, in fact, I describe our work and the opportunity in front of us to unlock student potential as a student experience where we are asking students to do resilient healing. We ask students to believe in their dreams, to dream so big, but then when they can't reach their dreams, we ask them to be resilient and to heal as quickly as possible, despite the fact that structures did not fully support their success. This is our collective call to action. This is the work that the team and I envision as a part of the Student Success Blueprint. Our collective work is building systems that heal, not systems to endure trauma. And I believe that we can do that work together. And I very much believe that that is the role of CSAC. Next slide, please. I know that because in joining CSAC, we have a very clear mission to promote educational equity by making post-secondary education affordable for all Californians. This is our North Star. I see a lot of strengths in our partnerships already statewide. I see the intersegmental role that we have as a gift to bring people together. And I see our statewide knowledge and what exists and what could better serve students as a part of our superpowers. We all know that our outreach ecosystem is wide. We're all trying to reach the same population of students. Our CalSOAP teams do incredible work. And we have diverse data sets that enable us to dream about student-centered design in a broader way. What would it look like for us to package Cal Volunteers, Cal Kids, and Cal Fresh as a full package for students? That's a reality that I know that our students deserve, and I know that that is what they are asking us for as they navigate our higher education systems and financial aid. Next slide. We also have a really big opportunity. California during this pandemic led by creating a statewide goal. Governor Newsom and higher education leaders and state legislators convened together to create California's 70% post-secondary degree and certificate attainment goal. CSAC is a key partner in this work and shares in your collective efforts to help California meet its post-secondary education goals by 2030. That's why our multi-year plan is a 5-year strategic plan. Next slide. We also have to recognize that we have an evolving educational landscape. As leaders, which you all are, at the same time, when we do this work, we have to acknowledge that higher education is evolving, K through 12 is evolving, our society and the political climate is shifting. All of this calls us to reimagine how financial aid can and should evolve for students. Statewide, we acknowledge these transformations that you see in this slide. The reality of this work is that nationally, we are also falling behind. This is at the heart of California's statewide goal. We need to serve students, adult learners in particular, at scale. We need to do something quickly and in real time when it comes to food and housing insecurity. We need to address the real fear of our undocumented students. We need to work together in collaborative ways as we think about dual enrollment and the future of that work in California, what it means to serve incarcerated individuals at scale. You've seen transformations at the federal level with Pell. All of those things create the foundation for how we think about the next few years and how we think about specifically financial aid, living wages for our students, and how we meet their basic needs. Next slide, please. I'm asking the team and all of you as we engage in walking you through the next few slides, and certainly the goals and the outcomes that we have designed for our Student Success Blueprint, to join us in a mindset shift. Every student deserves a pathway to dream. And at CSAC, we believe we can work and collaborate differently. So I'm asking you to join me in moving from being an institution-centered leader to being a student-centered leader, moving away from unmet needs to total cost of success, from programmatic changes to structural transformations, Those are going to be the real changes as we have this conversation and as you hear the next few slides. I'm going to ask the team to click just one more time. If we are successful in working together and having this mindset shift, I believe that this blueprint will have the ability to create for us the beginning stages of how California can lead the nation in creating a college affordability plan for California students. We are not there yet, but I can tell you that CSAC is doing the internal work to really think about our role in student success and what we at CSAC might do different. Number one, to make financial aid more predictable, a smoother process, how we work with our public, with our researchers, with our stakeholders, and all of the higher education segments. That is the internal work that you will see in this strategic plan. With that, as I want to hand it over to our Deputy Director, Brimner, because he's going to really ground us in our equity imperative. The scope of the work that is ahead of us has to be a North Star for how California can tackle equity gaps. Jake?
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. I'm Jake Bremner, Deputy Director for Policy and Public Affairs here at the Student Aid Commission, and I'm pleased to share with you just a few thoughts that we're holding in mind here at the Student Aid Commission team as we reflect on many of the points that Dr. Gonzalez just spoke to around the evolving nature of higher education in our state and the students that we seek to serve, and how we're grounding ourselves in their experiences, and also what the data shows us about this landscape. And first, I'm going to start with access. Many of you in your conversations with students and families, and if we could go to the next slide, please, you'll know that as particularly our first generation students are thinking about whether higher education, whether that's a 4-year degree or a short-term certificate, if that's accessible to them, it often comes down to affordability. And this isn't just borne out in the conversations that we have at the Student Aid Commission with families that we serve at our Cash for College workshops and other venues where we're working with students to apply for financial aid. This is borne out in a growing body of research and in survey findings. The survey that I wanted to speak to here was one conducted by Gallup in partnership with Lumina Foundation last year. And in this survey, Gallup polled adults who were aged 18 to 49 and had either not enrolled in higher education or had been forced to drop out. And the results were not just that affordability was the #1 factor for why adults had not enrolled in post-secondary education. Really, affordability-related barriers were numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the responses that those participating in the survey provided for why they had not enrolled or why they dropped out. The cost of the education or the training program itself, inflation-related affordability barriers that we know are affecting so many, but particularly impact those who are trying to perhaps work fewer hours to be able to go pursue higher education. And of course, to that very point, the need to work hours that precluded enrollment itself. These findings really track with other surveys, other areas of research where we've seen that students and families continue to understand the benefit that higher education, whether that's a degree or a certificate, the benefit that that can provide to their career and their employment opportunities. However, what they're questioning is the cost of obtaining that degree or credential and how they're going to overcome that. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to speak to what happens when our students do enroll and the challenges that they still encounter once they've enrolled with covering their basic needs, starting with food and housing. We at the Student Aid Commission are regularly surveying students about their expenses. And in the prior year, we conducted a survey specifically on food and housing insecurity. We surveyed financial aid applicants, and we found high rates of respondents that had been food or housing insecure as defined in federal law at some point over the prior year. Unfortunately, as you can see on the slide here, these results are consistent across our segments of higher education in California. While students are often discouraged from enrolling in higher education due to the sticker price of tuition and fees, it's often the challenge of covering their non-tuition costs that can result in students taking fewer courses in order to work, relying on loans or credit cards to cover costs, or even dropping out altogether because they're not able to manage all of that while taking care of themselves or increasingly helping take care of a family. And as you'd imagine, these issues don't affect all of our student populations in the same way. And if we could move to the next slide, there's just too much research for me to summarize everything here, but I did want to hit on 3 points that are really salient as we think about the equity imperative of this work and how, despite the tremendous investments that we're making in California to help students overcome the cost of higher education, that we know that is still not being felt equitably, particularly for many of the student populations that most rely on financial aid to make a post-secondary education accessible and affordable for themselves. The first point, of course, financial need varies, but it varies, and we see greater need amongst our Black and Latino students and their families. This was research done by the Public Policy Institute for California, PPAC, back in 2021, where they looked at how various student populations were participating in the federal Pell Grant program, which, while not a perfect measure of income status, is a very consistent one that we could look to understand which populations have the greatest financial need. Now, even when we account for family income and the amount of grant aid that we're providing to low and middle income families, another body of research, and this has really been led by our partners at TICAS, but was also published in a brief by the Campaign for College Opportunity in partnership with TICAS earlier this year, the net price of college, when you look at the total cost of attendance and you factor in all of that student financial aid that a student might be receiving, you're left with the net price that that student or family is trying to overcome. And despite the investments we're making, it's our lowest income students and families that still face the highest net price as a percentage of their family income. So while we're helping provide a good degree of support to them, we know that the amount that they're still left to absorb is a really significant share of all of the resources that that family or that student has available. Now, taking this all together, what this means, and again, this is borne out by research done by our partners at TICAS, is that student loan debt is being disproportionately carried by Black, Latino, and low-income students. And they're more likely to leave our public colleges and universities with greater degrees of student loan debt. This is, of course, a challenge that's compounded by inequities and intergenerational wealth amongst families that's really been borne out by decades of federal and state policy that has not treated all of our populations in an equitable fashion. Now, in my last slide here, before I pass it back to Dr. Gonzalez, I want to speak to how the work we're already doing at CSAC intersects with these issues and what it means as we think about the direction that we take the Student Aid Commission and that we help envision for our state over the next 5 years. We at the Student Aid Commission are really privileged to serve a diverse set of students with a diverse set of experiences and needs. The one thing that all of these populations have in common is that their circumstances are really changing in fundamental ways that are going to impact our work at CSAC and the vision we set for affordability in California. For our high school student population, our graduating seniors, that traditional college-going population, we know that there are demographic changes happening across California. We've seen this modeled in many places that show we're going to have smaller and smaller graduating cohorts of students leaving our K through 12 system, while at the same time, there's important work being done to intentionally blur the line between K through 12 and higher education so that more students can avail themselves of those dual enrollment opportunities that Dr. Gonzalez spoke to earlier. In our higher education segments, with the students that we're serving there, we know that there's this national conversation about that value proposition, the sticker price challenge that students are facing, the basic needs issues that I just spoke to a moment ago. But given that demographic change happening in K through 12, an increasingly large share of our student population that don't fit that quote unquote traditional student profile and are students who are balancing other life responsibilities, whether that's work or family, while they pursue higher education. And often that means they're coming with less social capital or fewer financial resources to be able to navigate higher education. And many of those students are our working learners or those comebackers that we were just speaking to. In a changing economy and workplace, and we hear this so often, we all know and recognize that those changes that are the pace of which is growing by the day increasingly require incumbent workers to come back to post-secondary education to or to upskill throughout their careers, often while they're balancing those work or those family responsibilities. What does this mean for our work at the Student Aid Commission as it stands now? We administer over $3 billion in state aid. And while that's primarily through two of our landmark programs, the Cal Grant and the Middle Class Scholarship, as many of you on this webinar know, there's a number of smaller and more specialized programs. These programs are designed to address specific student or state needs, but they result in varying eligibility requirements across programs and often separate applications or separate processes for eligible students to receive support. When state fiscal conditions are strong, we see new specialized programs established, only to be sunset when there are budgetary constraints. The result is a patchwork of programs that are often confusing for students, burdensome for those who are administering financial aid programs on campus or here at the Student Aid Commission, but also really challenging to communicate clearly and consistently, especially for our first generation students and families. So this is how we understand the financial aid need ecosystem and how we're looking at these issues as we then look ahead to the future and think about the role of the Student Aid Commission in addressing these challenges and helping us envision a new future state for California and our students. I'll pass it back to Dr. Gonzalez to speak to how we're kicking off that work.
Thank you, Jake. I'm going to ask the team for the next slide, and we are right on time. We're about to jump into our goal, which is to unveil draft one working plan of our work. And I just want to, as I transition, just acknowledge what I was hearing loud and clear from Jake, and that is our why. Our why are our students, and our why is our ability to evolve to unlock the true potential of the dreams of our students. And that cuts across all of our segments. And I think that's the beauty of the work that we can do together. Community colleges, UC, CSU, nonprofit colleges, all of the vocational programs that exist in our state, from K through 12 to higher ed, we have the same goal, and those are our students and their well-being. Next slide, please. You see our working title, but here is how I would describe this work. And the team and I did a lot of work behind the scenes. I want to acknowledge what it meant for us to even put together these two clear statements for you. Why a blueprint? A blueprint is, of course, when you think about building, right, architecture. For us, the CSAC Student Success Blueprint, Achieving Equity in Higher Education, is a 5-year strategic plan to support Californians and education segments to provide affordable and equitable higher education opportunities for today's students and future learners. CSAC believes that through collective efforts, we can address statewide workforce needs and economic mobility at scale. We are leaning into our role, and our role is to create the structures and the resources that all of you need to better serve your students. And we need your help. We need your help in making our ideas better and to gain the clarity that you need so that we can bring in new programs and remove barriers that students and institutions face when they try to access financial aid resources. Next slide, please. So we know a little bit about who is in our landscape, who it impacts. I want to talk about our goals and how we landed here, because you'll see this on our landing page, and the team is about to walk you through our outcomes. We organize ourselves through 3 very clear goals, because organizations that have more than 3 goals are very unlikely to achieve them. But what you'll see on our landing page and in the next few slides is we have 3 goals, very clear outcomes that we are hoping to achieve within a very specific time frame. And on the landing page, you're going to see our baseline. Where is California today? And then more importantly, by the year 2030, where do we need to be to better support students, families, and institutions? But I want to walk you through a high level through what are those goals. We have 3 financial aid equity goals as a part of this blueprint, where we are seeking to partner with all of you to support the education of California's future learners and to address workforce needs. Our first goal is equitable access, to lead collective efforts to increase statewide awareness and participation in California's financial aid programs. Those 2 things go hand in hand. The second goal is equitable support, to remove the financial aid barriers for students as they enter and continue their educational pathways. The team will walk you through this. This is the work, the internal work of CSAC, but it's also the external partnerships that we could launch to better support students and meet their basic needs. And then equitable success. Our goal is to empower students to complete their education by increasing the number receiving aid for which they're eligible for and creating metrics to inform future state equitable investments. I want to hand it over now to our Chief Deputy, Deputy Missler, to walk us through our very first goal, equitable access.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. So our goal number 1 is equitable access. And I think all of you who are listening in today and participating in this webinar are organizations who have doors to open and bring in those students and families who need to learn about the opportunities of higher education. And with that, the importance is the completing the financial aid application, the FAFSA or the CADA application. So here at CSAC, in our door, we're continuing to look at our data and to identify where are those areas that we need to focus in and to help and to support. And so the outcome number 1 is to increase the number of high school applicants who complete their FAFSA CADA application by at least 5% every year. And we don't think that that's too difficult. We know what we need to do. We just need to bring all of our partners in and ensuring that you all have the tools and that what we can provide in terms of support to reach those high school seniors and those families in completing that application. And we're providing those tools. We recently launched the community college dashboard so that community colleges have information and data information as to what their percentages are and who those students are that still need to complete the application, as well as our race assessment dashboard. And I know that many of you use that to see how your districts and how your communities and your local high schools are doing in terms of these high school seniors completing the FAFSA. So these types of reports and tools that are available, that is what we're here for at the commission, is to be able to provide that so that we can continue to increase the number of students completing that FAFSA and CADA, because that's the first step. Outcome number 1B is to maximize state resources and eliminate eligibility barriers to reach California's increasing low-income populations. We all have resources, and some may have less than others, but here at the Student Aid Commission, we're looking to maximize what we have and who we have and what support we're providing, as Dr. Gonzalez has mentioned, with our CalSO partners and our regional coordinating organizations and Cash for College, and how we can continue to expand those resources to those communities and schools that may not have that support. And those are part of those barriers, so that we can continue to look at who we need to focus on and bring in our partners and as well as their resources and share that together so that we can reach those low-income populations. Our outcome 1C is to grow outreach capacity and to enhance our partner coordination to address financial aid literacy gaps in California. We want to continue growing. We want to continue seeing what other organizations, what our partners are doing, what we're not doing, including CSAC, as well as what we need to do, and look to partner and prepare and be able to launch new tools, to be able to launch new partnerships. And although we have many partners today, there are still organizations, including other state agencies, that can help us in getting this word out on financial aid and educating families and students. And that's where we want to focus our outreach capacity so that we can be able to try and reach every student who could be eligible and is eligible today for financial aid. They're not taking the steps needed. And then our last outcome, 1D, is to support segment partners to educate California students and future learners by collaborating to increase the share of adult learners receiving financial aid for high-impact, short-term career training and credentialing programs. So we know that all of the public segments, as well as the nonprofit institutions, all the programs that they have on their campuses, and many of them are doing good work to help with their not only their students, but future learners as well. And so there are students out there, and many of you may hear of their choice not to pursue a bachelor's degree. Although we encourage them, their choice is there's many opportunities for different types of career training and credentialing programs. So we want to reach those students. Many of them think that financial aid is only tied to a bachelor's degree and not necessarily these short-term career training programs. So we need to make sure that students understand and that we educate them as to what is available for their continued education, and that we share the same information. And those that don't have that information, what else can we provide to provide that information so that it can be delivered to these students and these families? I'll turn that back to Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Catalina. I actually want to ask the team to go to the next slide. And I want to ask Tay to lead us through our equitable support goals and outcomes.
Thank you. So as we look at goal number 2, equitable support, as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned this earlier, this is the internal process. This is the program administration of all the programs that you saw that was listed on the prior slide. And so in my role as a Deputy Director of Program Administration and Services, I live, breathe, and dream this particular goal. And I'm really excited to see how much more we can do to ensure that these programs are advanced. As we think about this goal and about equity, achieving equity in higher education requires advancing equitable supports, which really emphasizes student-centered design, implementation, and administration of financial aid programs. Now, in recent years, CSAC has been tasked with launching numerous new programs and enhancing existing ones, often with time-sensitive deadlines. And as a result, we've relied on a standard approach or a cookie-cutter approach, building applications, creating award processes, and establishing different payment processes. Now, while this approach generally serves to establish programs quickly, get them stood up and implemented, it does not always provide the most efficient or streamlined experience for students and schools. So as we continue to focus on equitable support, our primary goal for students and families is timely access to financial aid, empowering them to make informed choices about higher education. To this end, simplifying financial aid processes, application requirements, and award communication is crucial to better supporting students, families, and institutional partners. In pursuit of this goal, we have identified both short-term and long-term outcomes. So some low-hanging fruit and some more strategic outcomes. And some are more readily achievable, while others do require strengthening existing partnerships and also establishing new ones. And these outcomes are represented in an initial roadmap to launch our efforts. This is not an exhaustive list, so I'm sure there's many more outcomes that come to your mind, but this is where we're going to start. So with this in mind, let's explore each outcome in greater detail. So outcome 2A is to streamline the Cal Grant renewal process for continuing students by making the process predictable and shorter. So for all of my financial aid practitioners out there listening in on this webinar, you know what this means. You know that the renewal process is often the very last one, and it's often the one that is overlooked at times. And renewing a Cal Grant student from year 1 to year 2, there's criteria that's set, and a lot of these criteria are self-imposed that often disqualify a student. So we cannot let that continue to happen. Not only that, some students who can't renew, their eligibility may sometimes disappear, or they have to jump through different obstacles just to get their Cal Grant back. So we're really looking at, something like mirroring the Pell Grant, where if a student has eligibility for 4 or 6 years, they get to use that anytime and without having these very restrictive renewal guidelines that they have to do to get it from year 1 to year 2. So this will be something that we really want to engage in as we think about our Cal Grant renewals. The continuing students, we often forget about them. They get their financial aid award notices late, and we want to change that so they have early awareness about as they enter into their sophomore or junior year or their last year, that they have visibility about their Cal Grant and financial aid. Outcome 2B, partner with segments, basic needs organizations, state and federal agencies to deploy data and technology solution partnerships to expand awareness and streamline access to state and federal programs and services that support student basic needs. So CSAC has already begun some of this work. We send notifications to students who have TANF eligibility, and we send notifications to let them know that about potential eligibility in the CalFresh program. But we really believe we're just scratching the surface. We can do a lot more. There's so many, as Jake has shared in his earlier slide about students who face so many basic needs and insecurities, whether it's food or housing or transportation. There's so many other needs that are out there. And we have existing data sharing agreements with several state agencies, with many of the segments, with many campuses, and they serve a great purpose, and they get us to make the financial aid process a lot more efficient and streamlined. But there is more. We can do a lot more to ensure that some of these basic needs are addressed in the complete financial aid package. So we're looking really to see how we can partner and have additional data sharing opportunities. We're looking to see if we can use technologies such as enhancing different student portals like Web Grants for Students to inform students about basic needs or other non-financial aid programs. Right now, we just tell them about their Cal Grant or Chafee Grant or Golden State Teachers, but there's opportunities while they're in that portal to provide visibility and awareness about other basic need programs. So really looking forward to establishing partners to automate eligibility of complementary programs and services all across student groups. The last one, outcome 2C, is to reduce administrative burdens for students by eliminating redundant applications and institutional processes through increased data sharing, specifically for special population and newly established or amended programs. And as we saw on that one slide, the list of specialized programs, each of those specialized programs have an additional or supplemental application, which is confusing for students. They already have to do a FAFSA or CADA. They may have to do other applications. Even within the Cal Grant process, there might be supplements or other forms that they have to fill out to provide that information to us. So what is it that we can do to eliminate those redundant applications? Is there data sharing opportunities so that we can get some of that data ahead of time and not require the student to submit or fill out a secondary application? So is there an opportunity to have some of that data housed so that the student can just have that information already in and we already know it? So that they don't have to submit supplemental forms to confirm eligibility. So as students continue to face these eligibility barriers due to changes in eligibility criteria, not completing certain actions, multiple applications, or confusing procedural requests, we need to simplify it. We need to make it so much easier to access financial aid. And this is what Outcome 2C will do. With that, I will pass it on to goal number 3 and to Jessica.
Thank you, Tay. So goal number 3 is equitable success. So this is really the outcome of all the outcomes. And starting with outcome 3A, increased paid rates for eligible applicants across all programs to ensure resources reach California's students in time. And this is really about the major metric we have right now to make sure that a student is, to make sure our programs are working is whether or not the student receives the dollars. Like, are the dollars that we've built the bridges for access and support actually resulting in the student getting the money in hand, either to pay for their direct educational expenses or their indirect expenses, like their living costs. The goal in this is, of course, we're already accomplishing that, but we want to do better. There are still students where we have made awards for them, but for one reason or another, those awards are not making it to them. Perhaps there are certain barriers that could be alleviated through data sharing. Also, there could be students who are eligible for additional aid that they don't know about. Maybe a student who received the tuition waiver, not realizing that with a couple extra steps, they would have a more complete financial aid package that could cover their living expenses beyond just covering their tuition and fees. And then outcome 3B is make student outcome data actionable by supporting California leaders to increase investments in financial aid that create pathways to reach students with the highest equity gaps. So this is our new outcome. This is our new metric. One thing that we have not been able to do here at CSAC is to actually identify the outcomes for our programs. And of course, At the end of the day, financial aid is meant to be an investment by the state, by the institution, by the federal government in creating that new generation of workers, of taxpayers, to be frank about it. But it's something that without actually knowing whether or not our programs are effective, we cannot truly advocate for future investments. If we're able to really show that these programs are working, that are actually getting students to graduate, to get meaningful employment opportunities, there's really not much we can do. And it's really what builds in the further support for additional access. It will grow the programs, additional support. It will bring more awareness to what we can do to help students. It's really something that will serve as leverage for us in really growing the affordability for California students. And also the fact that we want to get this data not just in an aggregate form, but at an individual level, because of course, we cannot hope to identify equity gaps for students without actually knowing for what particular students our programs are working well for, and maybe what groups they're not working so well for. So being able to do that level of analysis is really what's going to allow us to make the data actionable in a way that we can make sure that we're serving students in a more equitable fashion. And with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Jessica and team. Well, colleagues who are still with us, we're at the call to action and the next steps. We have approximately 14 minutes. And so I want to ask the team to go to the next slide. You heard a little bit about our why, where we're headed in terms of goals and outcomes. When you go to our landing page, you'll be able to see the baseline. Where is California today? Where do we need to dream? Because we need to dream big. To get to 2030, to not lose another generation of students, we need to dream big. This is the work that we just showed you, the work that the team did in 90 days of dreaming big. Our work is going to continue, but in the meantime, we really need your feedback. So as I walk you through the feedback portion of this, I want to share with you just point of privilege. Our 25-26 financial aid cycle will open on December 1st. And so when we think about this blueprint, our student success blueprint, getting ready for 25-26 is absolutely a part of the journey. You saw that in goal number 1. Outcome 1 is literally let's increase K to FAFSA by 5%. And so I want to pause here. This is the most important slide that you can take a photo of today. Our FAFSA CADA opens up December 1st, 2024. We are seeking extension deadlines for April 2nd of 2025. I know that some of you have been asking us that question. It is top of mind for us. Our mixed status families may continue to use their CADA with support to complete FAFSA because we can't leave any dollars on the table, but we know the reality of what it means for those families as we are asking them to apply. And then to help us in real time, because in many ways we are in the different but very similar environment as the prior year, CSAC wants to remain in contact with all of you so we can update you in real time. We will be launching monthly webinars starting in December of 2024. They will be quick. They will be focused on information, best practices, and tools for all of you. I'm so grateful that the team mentioned our new undocumented student landing page, our community colleges dashboard. Many more tools are on their way. And the goal is that we are helping more students apply for FAFSA CADA. With that, I want to go to the next slide. And this is where I humbly ask for your support and your feedback. The support that I need right now is a QR code scan. When you get there, you're going to see these same questions. What goal resonates with you the most? What is it about that goal that resonates with you? And are there any other topics that you want to ensure that we reflect in the CSAC Student Success Blueprint? This is work that we got in the next 90 days. As we head into the next 60 days, we want to integrate as much feedback as we can into the final version that our commissioners will see when they head to their December meeting. We also will continue that work as we head into their March meeting, so the work will continue. I want to make sure that I highlight one thing for you, though. You saw goals, you saw outcomes. We will also be transparent about our strategic actions. That's the work that CSAC is going to do internally. And so for some of you who may be thinking, what happened to Cal Grant Equity Framework? Actually, that's 1B. 1B is Cal Grant Equity Framework. When you think about low-income students, we already know the lever. But what are we going to do between now and the next few years to make sure that that is a reality? When we think about Cal Grant C, which was excluded as the state was envisioning Cal Grant equity reform, that's 1D. Outcome 1D highlights adult learners, low income, working learners. How will we reimagine Cal Grant C in the state of California now that we know that higher education and our students are shifting? So no idea, no feedback is too small. I want to encourage you to go to our landing page and just fill it out, especially if you're joining us live right now. What's top of mind for you? Which one actually spoke to, and then what is the thinking that you had and what is missing, essentially? Next slide, please. This last slide shows you then what happens after today's webinar. I want to encourage you to visit the landing page to give us that feedback and encourage others that may not have been able to join us today, but that have really important feedback to give us. We'll be doing a few more events. You can see those on that landing page where we are presenting on this blueprint to ask more Californians to give us feedback, but I want to ask for your help there as well. Please invite us to your events, your meetings, your communities. This is a collective effort. In fact, today this blueprint becomes your vision, your blueprint as well. That's the help that we need from all of you. And then I want to ask you to come back and put on your calendars, November 19th, we're having another webinar like this one. The next one will feature what is the internal work of CSAC, what changes did we make based on the feedback, and then what is the unfinished work, meaning where can we all work together differently? And then lastly, of course, it's never too late to give us feedback on the portal at any point in time, but also at our commissioner meeting. That meeting is taking place on December 5th. And then between December 6th and March 2025, the real work begins. We have to keep our public portal open, and then we have to continue to refine, because this is going to be a living document for CSAC. This is the work of then thinking about implementation, and that's where we really need all of us working together in a different way. So I want to thank you for joining us today and just thank the team behind the scenes who was answering questions. I already saw some really great feedback as we think about students, best practices where we integrate, which reminds me, don't know where my Zoom background is. I picked this background on purpose, and that's because on November 7th, we are having our California College Affordability Summit, and I want to ask you to join us for that summit. Some of you asked questions about how we better reach a certain student population or what we might be doing differently in 25-26. Please join us. It is a free virtual event. We have a number of sponsors who made this event possible for all of you. And I want to thank you for registering and considering attending that event with us. We're going to stay on a few more minutes to answer as many questions as we can. But for the first time, I can tell you, we are ending a webinar early or on time. Thank you so much for going to the landing page, giving us your feedback, and for considering your support as we head down this road, as we think about improving this document. Thank you, everyone.